Hello everyone, this is Hispa. Welcome to my channel. I will continue my series of podcasts with this new video in which I am going to talk about a much more technical topic related with HeroQuest than in my previous podcast. I think the time to do it has come because I know the matter I am going to talk about may be of the interest of a relevant part of the fans community of HeroQuest, since several of them have asked me many times about this topic through the last years. Moreover, the new release by Avalon Hill of Wizards of Morcar expansion set for HeroQuest has also led me to revisit once more my files related with the hot topic I am going to talk about, which is my so-called difficulty calculation model for HeroQuest games. But first of all, I would like to clarify something. Unfortunately, this topic has an unavoidable complexity which makes talking and listening about it a so hard experience, since it is rather difficult to do it in a cool and pleasant manner. So I am sorry if this video is not of the taste of many of you, nor your sleep resistance. But as said, it is something I know has interest for several fans, so I will just try to do my best. I promise the subsequent videos will not be as dense as this one, hopefully. Okay, so since the HeroQuest board game exists, there is one problem that every fan of the game has to face when trying to design his or her own homebrew adventures for the game, which is how to calibrate the difficulty of a new quest that he or she is designing before bringing it to the tabletop and start playing. Traditionally, the fans have solved this problem for decades by performing playtesting sessions in advance or just by taking design decisions based on their gaming experience and intuition, which is okay, but those methods are rarely able to provide any objective nor standardized outcome, so many fans have tried since long ago to develop some kind of mathematical or pseudo-scientific models which they could trust enough to predict, according to a factual and systematic methodology, the difficulty of their quest prototypes, without spending the high amount of time required by playtests or being forced to take blind design decisions over their creations without any objective support behind. Then, more than a decade ago, I already was one of those fans of HeroQuest who asked himself about how to solve this problem. At such moment, I had plans to play as Sargon all the classic HeroQuest campaigns with my group of players, and part of my hobby at the time was studying the different versions of HeroQuest, trying to identify their common points and differences to choose the best ones for my games. I was also trying to decide the best order of playing of all the campaigns, so defining a good roadmap for the coming gaming sessions was my principal motivation then to have access to a tool which I could use to calculate the difficulty of the quest. I understood that such kind of tool could be so useful to decide as better as possible in which order I should play the campaigns, according to an incremental difficulty criterion or according to the official story chronology, and of course I also saw it useful to satisfy my personal curiosity I had about comparing the two main classic game systems at the time, the European and the American ones. Well, according to all this in mind, I started to dig on internet trying to find somebody who had already solved this problem. And like in many other cases, but not the only one, the place where I found more valuable information about what I was looking for was the legendary Geolding forum website. I found there tons of cool ideas suggested by many forum members who had defined or proposed several mathematical methods with different grades of complexity and scope, which I am sure they inspired me a lot at the end. But I guess none of those ideas actually fitted at all with what I was looking for. But honestly, I don't remember all the reasons why none of those methods convinced me, but the few I vaguely remember is that I found several of those methods too focused on the classic concept of hero growth linked to experience points gained through the different games. I am referring to the typical way inherited from role-playing games to gain experience points by the heroes, depending on how many monsters and types they had defeated during the games. Of course, I saw such approach as something to take a look, but at the same time I understood counting the number of defeated monsters during their games as a too unpractical thing for a board game like HeroQuest, where there are tons of monsters, encounters, and dice rolls, which I think used to encourage Sargon player to try to ensure the game flows with the less extra interruptions as possible. Moreover, the term experience used for the heroes was not something covered by the official rule system of HeroQuest, where heroes' growth was actually represented by the equipment they are able to buy or get through the quest. In other words, I probably considered at the time that adding too many RPG touches of this kind to a board game like HeroQuest was going a bit far for this kind of game. Moreover, and with all my respect to their authors, I also remember that the proposed methods looked to me a bit incomplete for my interests, since just a few forum members covered other topics despite of the monsters, which would also affect the difficulty of the games, like for example, the traps the heroes may potentially find through their exploration of the dungeon, which was something I would like to consider. Therefore, at some moment of such researching stage, I finally saw myself forced to design my own difficulty calculation method if I wanted to satisfy my curiosity. Then, after some years thinking, in year 2019, I finished my first calculations of the basic game system campaign using an Excel spreadsheet, and I quickly realized that the problem looked easy in a first approach, but it was not actually like that at the end, especially because the high amount of data I had to extract from the official quest books, and the high number of specific game rules I had to cover with the calculations, if I really wanted to develop a difficulty prediction model with a minimum of quality and reliability. Then, the development process was not going to be an easy trip. Since the beginning, I had cleared that any results provided by the prediction method in terms of difficulty will not be able to reflect the difficulty of a quest in a deterministic manner, since I expected that the method would not reach such high accuracy in any case, if I did not develop a full game simulator which could be able to emulate HeroQuest games in an automatic manner in just a few seconds, which, of course, was something impossible with the resources and time I had available. HeroQuest is not a deterministic and balanced board game, nor a game which is played the same way by all players due to many reasons. So I had clear that the only realistic outcome of my model would be something I might use to compare from a qualitative standpoint versus a potential known reference, which could be only determined according to the gaming experience of its creator, who was me in this case. I soon concluded that trying to have a pure quantitative solution for this, which I could trust at the end, was something absolutely impossible by means of a simple calculation model like the one I was able to create. And in my opinion, this is exactly one of the key points of all this project. Like any other mathematical model which tries to emulate a real phenomenon, any theoretical model designed to predict in advance the difficulty of a HeroQuest adventure must be built over several hypotheses. In case of my current version of the model, the number of hypotheses I had to consider were a lot. Except most of the monster stats, which dice statistics are rather easy to be covered by the model, the rest of different variables you may need to cover to be able to represent the difficulty of the quest in a reliable manner are so many, and most of them unfortunately cannot be derived from any obvious mathematical number written on a game card. So yeah, the only affordable solution I saw at the moment to solve this was introducing more hypotheses based in my personal experience with the game, but of course, it would mean that every fan of the game who would like to create their own model too had probably introduced different hypotheses than mine, because I guess each player would have different perception about how much weights each relevant parameter of the game in the total difficulty. Therefore, to avoid being too soon overwhelmed by the project, I thought it prudent to reduce the initial accuracy expectations I had at the beginning by assuming some limitations. Then, as a first version of the model, I finally decided at the time that it was just going to cover the total difficulty that monsters and traps of a quest could suppose to the heroes if they had to encounter all of them during the game. But I decided to not cover other elements from the quests which may also affect difficulty. Then I decided to just become the model an arithmetical exercise of summing up the difficulty values that each monster and trap in the quest could individually suppose, and the contribution of each monster or trap in the total difficulty of the quest were going to be values determined by a combination of numerical parameters and hypotheses based on their official specific rules in the game. Of course, I was not inventing the wheel. I was totally aware about it was a so simplistic approach, because I was assuming that the heroes were going to encounter every monster and trap in the quest, one by one, without considering any other details, something not actually happening in most of the real games. However, this was the starting point I needed to go forward with the project, and honestly, this approach has more or less been enough for me until now. Then, after having the first results, I called my difficulty calculation model as HZ-DCM, and I began to improve the method more and more since then until today. The calculation model I was developing was initially intended to just evaluate the difficulty of the already existing quests included in the official classic quest books of HeroQuest. However, of course, I quickly realized how cool could be also using this method for design purposes in the creation process of new homebrew quests. Nevertheless, whatever use was going to be at the end, the definition of the calculation method would be essentially the same, and if the model were used for quest design purposes, in my opinion, it would be only useful if it would be also combined with complementary playtesting sessions, since otherwise the creator would not be able to cover all those topics that the model is not able to cover due to its known intrinsic limitations. Honestly, I really think the cheaper way to design quests in terms of dedicated time and quality balance is using a model of this kind which you are comfortable with, calibrate the difficulty of your quest's prototype by using it, and after that perform the appropriate playtest to practically validate your expected difficulty and also catch everything else you missed on the paper. Nevertheless, even knowing that I would never have a perfect model which I could use on my fan-made projects, since I had no time to program a full automatic simulator of HeroQuest games, which had probably been the ideal solution for this, I didn't fall apart and I continued developing my model through the years. Step by step, I started using the model to calculate the difficulty of each one of the classic official expansions from both European and American game systems, and at the end of the year 2021, with the re-release of HeroQuest by Avalon Hill Hasbro, I also started to share the results of those calculations in the old forum website, including the ones related with the Mighty Tiger new campaigns. I just did it to give information to the rest of the forum members about what I was discovering in terms of difficulty of the quests. As said, all this from a numerical comparative standpoint only, and I continued using the model according to the new HeroQuest campaigns and rules which were being released by Avalon Hill through all these years, and since then I also continued sharing their results in the all-in forum website, of course. Well, unfortunately, covering all the details in this video about my difficulty calculation model is not possible. So if you are interested in this work, I encourage you to check the corresponding thread on the all-in website, which link can be found on the description below. There you will be able to find more details about how I performed the analysis, the conclusions I was deriving from using the model, and of course you will find there all the results I have been sharing through the years with the fans of the HeroQuest game. You will also find the difficulty estimations I obtained with the model for each one of the official quests of the game, for the classic and modern versions in the same of charts and comparison between versions, but please remember that pictures in the old forum website can only be seen if you have the champion member rank. Sorry about that, but it is not a whim of the forum responsible, it is to reduce the number of undesired activities by bots and other kinds of Sargon digital minions. But I want to be fair. You will not be able to find yet all the secrets of my model in the all-in, nor anywhere else by now. I am referring to all the numerical hypotheses I consider and the equations that my calculations have behind. In other words, the core of the method. I want to publicly share them, and I had a lot of ideas about how to do it, but never done yet. There are a combination of reasons for that, which I think is fair to explain. First of all, because that was not my intention at the beginning of the project, since I just made it for my personal use only at a moment when HeroQuest fans were less visible than nowadays, a moment when the fans community was not so active like today. after the release of the game by Avalon Hill. So I honestly never thought at such past moment that my difficulty calculation model was going to be of the interest of many other fans years later. This means that I never prepared the model in a friendly manner. I mean, in a manner easy to be used by anyone except me. So just setting all this work as a bundle of raw Excel files was something that always horrified me because I think it would not be something actually useful for nobody without clear explanations behind. The best thing of a mathematical model of this kind, what makes it really useful, I think, is having the method well explained somewhere, with the basis of the hypothesis considered by the author to design the model and its limitations. So having a document where I could explain all that is the manner I would like to share it sometime in the future, but that's a lot of work and, well, with the unexpected re-release of HeroQuest by Avalon Hill in between, I have been working in many other projects through these years. Many people asked me for collaboration on their projects, and I usually did it if I saw they were going to make the hobby better. So the new wave of fan-made projects literally forced me to put apart this developing project for a long time. So I have just revisited it from time to time to recalculate the quests of the new official products. But unfortunately, I had no time available for more, or at least not more motivation than the one I had for other projects. So once I have my first version of the model finished, I stopped there the method development, and that's the same version I have been using since years ago. But there are also other reasons why I did not fully share the model theory yet. One it is that I know my model is not the best model I can develop to be used for design purposes of homebrew quests. I see it still very incomplete and just barely validated. That's my honest feeling and message. The model I have is enough to perform gross comparisons like I did with the resulting charts I have shared with the community through these years on Yeol-In. However, it still needs a lot of fixes and polishing to make it a really useful tool. By now, I see just a model which has a lot of my personal experience inside, a model which could work for me, but I suspect it may not probably work well for other players. So I would like to introduce changes before having the confidence to share it as if it were a good tool. Most of you knows how much value I give to the quality of the fan-made material before sharing it, and this tool would not be an exception. I have even felt some pressure by some individuals through these years to share with them the questions, etc. An interest which, of course, I really appreciate in most of the cases, but not all of them. Not everyone who asked for information had the best intentions. Unfortunately, it is not impossible to find people out there who are monetizing fan-made creations done by others without any shame. So, according to this and to all previously mentioned reasons, I finally took the uncomfortable decision of putting aside the project until I find the right moment to continue with it. If I see the interest still exists in the future about my model, I will publish sometime all its details in the right manner I think will be more useful for the fans of the game. And of course, I hope you will be informed through this YouTube channel. But as said, that's not something I will do by now, so sorry about it, but things are as they are. Well, with the recent release of Wizards of Morcar expansion set by Avalon Hill Hasbro, of course I returned once more to my difficulty calculation model to calculate the difficulty of the expansion and make the appropriate comparisons like I have done with all the released expansions until now. During this exercise, I discovered some interesting details about the expansion, but explaining them right now would take me much more time and this video is already being too long. So I think it is a good idea talking about those results and my personal conclusions about them in a later podcast. But before finishing, I would like to mention that there are also other channels on YouTube who have also talked in detail about how to calculate the difficulty of HeroQuest games. Surely there are others, but at least I remember right now the channels HeroQuest and Héroe de Leyenda who had recently talked about this. So I encourage you to also check out their channels for more information and to know other different approaches to this matter. And now, yes, thank you so much for listening so far. please subscribe to my channel to stay tuned if you like the type of content I make, and see you soon on my next video.